Hey everyone, it's Andy Kushner, host of The Wedding Biz. Welcome to another episode. And I would like to give you a chance to write me personally. I want to know if there are any guests who have not yet been on the show who you would like me to interview. Or are there any other topics that you would like me to cover? I'm really interested to hear what you have to say. If you have nothing to suggest, I would like to know what you already enjoy and would like me to continue doing. So I'm going to give my email address. I'm going to get back to every single person, so be patient. It may take me a few days. And that is andy@theweddingbiz.com. Again, andy@theweddingbiz.com. So I've been doing kind of a series on people from San Francisco area. And last week was Robert Fountain. If you missed it, very interesting conversation. Robert is a very unique planner and designer, has a very different way of approaching his business. I highly recommend that you check it out. And I am so excited to announce that this morning's guest is Alison Hotchkiss Rinderknecht of Alison Events, a wonderful planner and designer who works globally. And I was really lucky to meet with her in her office in Sausalito. Alison is so genuine. The moment I stepped in, we immediately hit it off, had such a great time with her. Alison has another company. She partnered with Jesse Toombs for this, and it's called Event Space Consulting. So you're going to hear about that soon as well. And don't forget to listen to our follow-on segment that we release every Monday after each interview, and that's called The Next Level, in which my co-hosts and I pick out some of the highlights of the morning, and we basically break them down, deliver them as specific tactical tips to help you raise your business to the next level. So be sure to check that out. I have something really special to talk about. It's our sponsor for today, and believe me, we check them out thoroughly. We don't just take anyone. So I want to say that if you need more presence in the market and you're wondering how to accomplish that, you need to check out OFD Consulting. They are an award-winning publicity agency that focuses on the wedding industry. Their client portfolio ranges from top-tier planners and venues to well-regarded national brand and industry thought leaders. OFD Consulting has placed clients in a slew of popular online and offline publications, and they also have a service dedicated entirely to B2B press. So for those looking to elevate your brand reputation among peers through online mentions, guest articles, podcasts, and speaking engagements, you've got to contact them. And one more piece of information I want to tell you, that if you're a small business, and most of us are, and you want to dip your toes in the PR waters, check out the OFD Collective, which is a 3-tier membership with robust educational and coaching opportunities along with ongoing press leads. So check out ofdconsulting.com. And now, my conversation with Alison Hotchkiss Rinderknecht. So, Alison, thank you so much for agreeing to be on the show. And I love where your office is. The views are insane here in Sausalito. It's incredible.
Thank you.
So, I understand that you have been producing something like over 400 events in 9 countries all over the world. I don't know how you're doing this, and you're raising a child. You have a lot going on.
Yeah. I started my business a while ago, so I've had the opportunity to meet with some pretty amazing couples, both here locally, a lot of couples from Asia, couples from all over the country. And, you know, sometimes they come to us with a location, and sometimes they say, hey, where should we get married? That's always one of my favorite parts.
Yeah. Well, you know, I would like to step back for a moment because, you know, we all know how so much of who we are is shaped by our childhood and how we grew up. And it's always interesting to me where the passion kind of gets sparked. Were you into this kind of industry, the love of decor and planning when you were little? Like,
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny. I was talking to my mom about that the other day, and she was actually making fun of me when I was probably like 8, 9, 10 years old. She said that when my friends would come over, I would make lists of all the things we were going to do. So I'd have like an organized list, like a planning list of the activities we were going to do for the day. Like it might say we were going to eat this snack at this time and watch this show at this time. And then we were going to play dress up at this time. And
oh, really? And how old were you this time?
I was probably 10, maybe a little bit younger.
That's so interesting. You know, I wonder where that comes from.
I don't know. My sister and I also used to make a list of all the TV shows, you know, back in the day when you'd watch Three's Company and The Jeffersons and all those fun.
I remember those days.
Right? We would have a TV show list that we would organize every week as to what shows we were going to watch. And so I feel like I always was very organized. I come from an entrepreneurial family. So my dad was always kind of multitasking many things. And I feel like I probably learned some of that organization from him.
It's interesting to me that, people say it's not just what the parents say, it's what they do, right? It's the behavior that really, and I feel almost like osmosis, we're around our parents. That's what we know. Yeah. And so that's all we know about the world in the beginning, right? Mm-hmm. Because I was the same way, very organized, disciplined, and my parents, especially my father, was an anthropology professor, and I would see him and hear him talking, and it had a lot to do. So then, when did you start to what did you do? Did you go to college?
Yeah, I went to Colorado State. I went to, and really only chose to go to school in Colorado because we grew up skiing up in Vermont.
Yeah.
Grew up in Connecticut, skied in Vermont, and would go out to Colorado on ski trips. So I thought, well, I want to go to school in Colorado. Duh, that's where I'm going to go skiing. So that was the drive on that. So, but my degree was not, I didn't even have a degree until my junior year. And I only declared my degree my junior year because I was forced to, which was natural resource recreation and tourism. I don't even know if they have that anymore.
Makes sense coming out of Colorado.
Right. It just seemed like the most fun. There was no option for event planning back then. But what I did really enjoy in school was the marketing classes and advertising classes and cultural studies, international studies. I always enjoyed learning about other cultures and customs and kind of the piece around marketing and hospitality and hotels. And so
as relative to culture?
Everything. Yeah. Hospitality was one of the courses I took. Mm-hmm. At the time, it was really like hotel management, right? Yeah. And I knew I had no interest in doing that, but I liked the idea of travel. So really, when I graduated from school with that degree, I thought, okay, so am I going to be a kayaking instructor or what am I going to do? And I moved to LA and, opened the newspaper.
Why LA?
My sister was living in LA.
Oh, okay.
She had moved there out of school and I had an opportunity to move out to California from Colorado. So I moved in with her and literally newspaper opened and was looking for things that had something to do with natural resource recreation and tourism. And there was a job opening for a company that did travel and tourism with groups coming from New Zealand. Mm-hmm. So they would arrange at the time sightseeing tours and dinners for these, 20 to 30 person groups that were coming to LA for a week. And that was really special to me because I lived in New Zealand for a year. So I felt like, oh, well, there's my calling, New Zealand. I live there. I understand those people and that culture and organizing parties. Well, I did that when I was a kid. So luckily I started there.
Incredible. I keep hearing this over and over with people, just the serendipity, the synchronicity of a moment like that, right? First of all, you're coming to LA because of your sister.
Right.
You open the paper, like you say, you got to get a job and you see that.
Yeah.
And how often is someone going to see a connection to New Zealand like that?
Right.
That's crazy. It grabs your attention and you do it.
Well, in my pitch, I remember going in for the interview. The boss that I ended up having was a Swiss guy. And, I'd traveled all over New Zealand. And I said, listen, I don't have any experience under this other role of planning events, but I sure as hell know a lot about New Zealand and I've traveled the country and I feel like I can really speak to, those people that are interested in coming to America and selling America to them. And he was like, okay, you got the job.
Wow. And you're 21, 22
or
something like that?
Right out of school. Mm-hmm.
How long did you do that?
I did it for about a year and then started, my eyes opened, by meeting other people that there was actually this other career in event planning. So I transferred over to a corporate event planning company.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, pretty quickly. I'd say, within a year.
And how did that go for you?
It was actually great. I loved it. The great part about the discipline of what I do now and the history of kind of where I've come is that in the corporate event planning world, there's generally two sides to it. You're producing or you're doing the planning, the sales side. So I started off as a producer, being on the ground, meeting, greeting people at the airport, organizing all the tours, the dinners, working with the decor people. And I did that for a little while. And then I dabbled in the sales side. So then I kind of could put the two together. How does it actually work? And then how do you sell it? You can't really sell it if you don't know how it actually works. So I feel like that was so helpful in my early years.
What aspects of it do you feel really stuck with you, in terms of selling and what you learned there?
Definitely. And from a production side, is just multitasking, is really knowing how to operate many things at one time and not be overwhelmed by all those pieces happening at one time.
That is key, isn't it? Not to be overwhelmed.
Yeah. There'd be so many things happening at one time with multiple groups and hundreds of people coming and going. that you really had to kind of keep calm and carry on. So I feel like that part for me is something I still instill, people comment on often, like you seem to be really relaxed and there's like a fire in the kitchen. So
yeah, right. Yeah, it's funny. I think I've said this many times on the show is that in my early days, I'd wear my emotion on my sleeve. And it's funny. Someone said to me, it was Melissa who co-hosted the Next Level episode. She was talking about how, she would just be walking fast. And you can tell just from her walk that something's up. And what is it? And, we want to keep, obviously, not only the client from knowing anything, but our own team. We got to keep everybody calm and collect.
Well, it's always stems from the top, right?
It does.
It's funny, if you can be the leader and the leader's calm, then you can generally create that calm environment as it trickles down.
But inside, are you just...
Oh, I grind my teeth at night.
Okay.
Yeah, there's other ways but I have always really had a strong around a work-life balance. That's always been very important to me. I've always maintained time to be with family and friends and, go to my yoga class, go for a hike, do the things that I enjoy. And
so in terms of like just grounding you?
Yeah, it's always been important to me and I've always instilled it in my employees. And it's a part of my pitch is that's an important part of how we are able to do what we do, is that the work-life balance is a part of it. So we really ask that they're respectful of that.
That's interesting that when you're talking to prospective clients, you're explaining that.
Yeah. And, every once in a while you have somebody come along who really wants somebody available 24 hours a day. And we're not the right fit for that because that's just not how we're not our best when we're constantly,
But how do you frame it? I'm just trying to imagine myself in the moment talking to the prospective client and explaining that. How do you frame it to them?
Well, we're really available a lot. We work on Monday through Friday, 9 to 5 hours. Of course, if we're talking about the week of the production and something comes up, obviously we make ourselves available, but we just try to explain that like our vendors are an extension of our family and that we are really passionate about what we do and we take a limited amount of events. And by doing that, like we are actually 150% better than if we're overworking ourselves. But then that also carries through in just making sure that our staff's well fed, that, we're not pushing our staff to work too many hours. We're just trying to keep that balance trickling through the whole production. And I really think it makes a big difference.
I really like how you do that. I want to mention a quote here too that you said that's really interesting to me. You said, "I'm constantly seeking projects that expose me to new challenges, whether that's doing an event in a new city or using technology in a whole new way or bringing an ambitious idea to life. I'm game. I look for clients who are adventurous, open to collaborating, and up for doing something that's never been done." I love that.
Yeah, I feel like if we're doing the same thing every time, I'm bored. So I'm looking for, clients that want to explore a little bit and try something different. And maybe it's not the quintessential, wedding plan where you've got your, it's like you get married, you buy the white picket fence, you have a family. That was never really in my head. That wasn't how things were going to happen for me. And so I feel like it's the same thing for my couples. Like, let's just get deep and figure out what is the deeper meaning of who you are individually as couples, where you come from culturally. And then let's say make a fun, enjoyable afternoon or evening that has some things that reflect that. And let's just try and make it a little bit different and unique.
I assume this is also something that you're talking about, just like the issue of availability and balance, that this is something you put out front with people.
Yeah, I think it's important that you kind of put down how you work. I mean, I have colleagues that say, I can't even believe that you say boundaries within that initial meeting. I would never be able to say that to some of my clients, but that's why there's so many great clients for different people.
Well, also, I'm just thinking for me, if I was in the client's shoes, I immediately would admire, respect that, and immediately it forms a certain amount of trust that you're being so direct with me up front.
Right.
And so I would think that that is what helps attract the right people to you.
Right. Another part of that is, I'm going to be really real about how I feel about things. And maybe sometimes you won't like my opinion, but you're hiring me as a professional with experience to tell you how I feel about something, whether it's, do I like this color? Do I think the ceremony setup should be like this? Do I feel that you should address this issue with this family member? Like, those are all things that I'll be very real about. And I think that that's important in finding a good partner, that's going to take you through this kind of monumental life experience. Why not have somebody who can just be really honest with you? I'm not their mother.
Yeah.
I'm not their best friend. I'm somewhere in between.
And I want to come back to this in a moment. So I would imagine that this is how you presented yourself from the beginning.
Yeah. I mean, obviously the way that I communicate with clients has evolved over the years because I've found that I just attract certain types of clients. So I feel like I want to continue. Like right now, I love my clients. It's very rare that I have a client that I say, oh, I can't wait till this wedding is over. And I'd say very early on in my career, I kind of took whatever I could. I just kept taking clients and I kept taking whatever work would come my way. And now I really feel that it's important that the fit is right for both people. So that's important to me.
So can you characterize the type of client that is right for you?
I would say somebody who, and it's not necessarily about the age, it's just somebody that has a general idea of what they want, but they're really open for suggestions. They're adventurous. They're well-traveled, generally educated, really willing to trust. I think trust is such a key component in this whole piece, is this person is trusting that you're going to guide them along the right path, whether it's with the vendor that's right for them personality-wise, budget-wise, stylistically.
And when you say this and you also talk about them being adventurous, again, I understand that part of that is trust. They have to trust you in order to be adventurous. But how do you define adventurous, when it comes to these events? Like just that they're willing to try and they're willing to hear any idea from you and do something different?
Yeah, like let's just take the typical ceremony that's at XYZ venue, and this is how it's been done every way.
Yeah.
So how about we bring, we did a wedding in Hermel, and we brought in a grand piano. We put it on a platform in the middle of the redwood forest.
Oh, wow. Beautiful.
It was so dramatic. People walked down this mystical pathway, and then they could hear the music as they got off the bus. And it just was such a different approach than the trio.
I love that, Alison. Was that on the way to the ceremony?
You could hear it as you got off the bus. And then when they got to the ceremony, how do you get a grand piano in the middle of a redwood forest? Right. It was a lot of effort.
Yeah.
We had another groom that wanted to have some sort of really impactful arrival. He said, the bride always has this dramatic entrance. Well, we were on top of Mammoth Mountain. And we said, well, why don't you arrive by helicopter?
Oh, come on. That's great.
So he arrived by helicopter, and he had so much fun in those leading up moments before he walked down the aisle. It was just a nice reverse role, and the bride thought it was fantastic.
Did she know that he was going to come that way?
Yeah, she did. Because there was a weather, we had to,
But the crowd didn't know, I imagine.
The crowd had no idea.
So they're seeing this helicopter, they're all looking up, and then it starts coming closer to them. Mm-hmm. That's fantastic. Did it land on the ground, or did it come down
on a rope?
It landed
on the ground, yeah. And then he had to walk up.
How much adventure you going to do?
So maybe the adventure is not grandiose, but adventure could be used in terms of just let's think about it in a different way than how you might typically think about it.
In that quote, you also mentioned using technology in a whole new way. Can you give some examples of that?
Yeah, that probably stems from early on when tech really became a prominent part of kind of weddings, which is let's create a website that people can access, during the wedding weekend. So maybe we can eliminate paper materials and direct them to either an app or a website so they can access that information easily. Mm-hmm. Early on, when Instagram first started, we were doing hashtags to define their specific wedding so that they could find all of their images. We had a couple that had a sister who was unable to make the wedding. They were getting married in Palm Springs. She was in Hong Kong, and we televised the ceremony so she could be there with the couple. We've done that a couple times now.
That's a great idea. I mean, because there could be grandparents, people who are just ill.
Also, too, just choosing locations that are far-flung. We just did a wedding in Japan on an island called Naoshima. And it was fantastic. I mean, it took so long to get there. It was such a journey. And there was a monsoon actually during that we were there. But people had a blast because there was so much amazing art on the island. They had never done weddings there. It was just really experiential. And I think that our typical client wants more of an experience than the typical, rehearsal, wedding, brunch.
So just for a moment, staying with that for a minute, doing this on an island off Japan, were you flying in a lot of vendors? I like to call them partners. Or how did you deal with locally? I mean, that's a radically different culture.
Right. Yeah. So this is a tricky thing. My general approach towards destination weddings or weddings from afar is really to try and use as much local as we possibly can. Sometimes it comes down to budget. So we really do try and incorporate as many people and support as we can. But, it is oftentimes the client wants to maybe bring their photographer or bring a videographer. This specific wedding in Japan had very little resources. They don't even do weddings. So we did actually have to bring in almost everybody.
Wow. Must have been a big budget.
It was a decent budget, yes.
And what about just dealing long distance ahead of time? I mean, the whole language barrier, the whole cultural barrier, all of that. You just had to just kind of get through that.
Generally when I'm working in foreign land where I don't speak the language, I do hire a local person. So we did some heavy research and found a really lovely woman who was based in Tokyo who kind of acted as our eyes and ears and translator. And that was really, really an important part of the production. She was amazing.
Did that person have event experience too?
Yeah, she actually did weddings in Japan, in Tokyo.
Oh, that's great. So it was both the translation and the understanding.
Yeah. So that was very, very helpful and was able to kind of be our middleman for even accessing some things that would have been normally hard to get.
Is this the wedding in Japan that was published in Vogue Japan?
Yeah, we've done 2 weddings in Japan. That was just recently here this summer. And then we did a wedding last year also in Japan at the new Amanimu Hotel in Tsushima.
And I think you were the first to bring a wedding to one of these places.
Yeah. They've never done a Western.
What was the response like?
The first wedding was a little challenging because it's a brand new resort, had just opened. But we luckily had a good team of people there and they were very collaborative. So we were able to work really well together. But I did learn from the first one that it was really imperative that I had a language barrier person and somebody who could be on the ground pulling resources for us.
Well, I'm also thinking, because I remember I was at some entertainment or rather event conference where I think it was Andrea Michaels, Extraordinary Event, who does a lot of corporate stuff all over the world. She gave a presentation on when you are working, like whatever, China, Japan, these different places, the cultural difference and even how to present a business card, how to greet somebody and how certain words in English don't necessarily translate very well. It was really interesting. Do you have to deal with all of that too?
Yeah, we definitely try to be as well versed in what the cultural traditions are and what the etiquette is prior to entering into that relationship. It's the same thing when we're in France, when we're in Italy. We've found that when we were in France, working with men was a little challenging. So we, brought on some male staff with us so that they could kind of act as the mediator between.
Yeah. That's great. I heard also another story that you did. It was in France some years ago, which had Chris Martin performing. And it was just, I think it was one of the most affluent men in China, something like that.
Yeah, we had done the brothers. So this was a groom who hired us in China. The groom's family pays for the wedding. And in America, obviously, the bride's family traditionally pays. So we did the sister's wedding who lives in America. We did her wedding in Italy a couple years prior. And then they hired us for the brother's wedding in France. And he married another very prominent person in Hong Kong. And so it was a very large production with a lot of moving parts and dynamics and personalities and other very prominent people in Hong Kong. So it was an incredibly over-the-top production.
Can you give a little bit of detail?
Yeah. A lot of the guests that came, just they had security guards for their handbags.
What? For their handbags?
Yeah. There'd be like a security guard standing on the side next to the ceremony that might be holding one of the women's handbags. Or they had, Chris Martin, who came and performed their first dance. He played like a 45-minute set. We had a lot of dynamics over rooms, like who was staying in what rooms at the hotel. And then we had to incorporate, obviously, Chris into that piece and then the production team and that whole thing. So dynamically, it was interesting to understand like who's the seniority within these friends of this family and then the family members and who was going to stay in what room.
Wow, that never even occurred to me.
So many moving parts with that because a lot of it's about seniority.
Is that part of the culture? Well, I mean, for anywhere, but especially there.
Yeah. And then there was divorced parents and then dynamics with, the divorced parents and the ex-wife and that like sometimes you have that at a wedding where you have my mom can't sit next to my dad because they're not married. But this was like next level.
Oh, yeah.
With she can't even physically see her because her new boyfriend is there.
Oh, come on. Can't even line of sight.
So I was standing at the end of the ceremony and the bride asked me right before she walked down the aisle, she said, I don't want my soon-to-be mother-in-law to see my dad's girlfriend. So I had to stand and block her as she was walking down the aisle.
Wow.
So that she wouldn't see. Yeah, it was like...
This is right before she goes down the aisle.
Yeah. There was just kind of little things like that kept popping up that were just deep dynamics that we didn't necessarily know that level until we were there on site running around trying to figure out how to protect certain people.
Yeah. Wow. Well, I'm wondering ahead of time, because, earlier you were talking about how you find the personality of the couple, almost the culture of it, all of that. What is generally your process, when you meet a client, other than what we've spoken about, setting some boundaries, which I love, in terms of taking that next step so that you can go again in that adventurous route? Like, how do you call that out of them?
We like to spend a good amount of time with our couples, just understanding who they are individually, who they are as a couple, what are their passions, what is their background, what do they do for fun, what are their favorite restaurants, who are their style icons, who are they in the world? Like, it's almost like online dating or dating in general, right?
Yeah.
You kind of know in the first 15 minutes, you have a general idea, right? So it's the same thing when you're interviewing a potential client. You're just trying to get to know them. And a lot of the times it's, what's this going to be like? What are the dynamics with family? Are your parents married? Are they divorced? Where are people traveling from? What's the most important thing to you? So we have this extensive list that we really try to understand so that we can make sure that we're the right fit for them, understand what the budget parameters are. A lot of people call and say, I love this wedding that you did on your site, but a lot of people have no idea like what things cost. So sometimes it's educating them around, oh, you like this idea. Well, something like that is going to cost between this and this. So we just spend a lot of kind of qualifying time with them, to talk through this. What's the idea? What kind of a budget are we working with? And where's people coming from? And what's going to be the most important part?
Well, and you also talked earlier about the collaborative aspect of it, right? Because, and it's, again, we talked about boundaries. It's not just that, but you're going to be collaborating, literally.
Yeah. And it's funny because, I do say in my pitch, look, this can be completely collaborative. It can be where you're coming up with ideas. We're coming up with ideas. We're talking through it. But we have some clients that are like, we just trust you, do your thing. And we have other clients who have tons of ideas, and we spend more time trying to figure out how to make their ideas work. So it can go both ways. It can go somewhere in the middle. But I probably most enjoy when a couple comes to me and says, hey, I have this thing that I like really love, or my fiance and I went on our first date here. For example, we did a wedding a couple years ago where the couple, their first 5 dates were restaurants in San Francisco. And they were very iconic restaurants, and they keep going back there. And they said, on our wedding day, we really want to like recreate like 5 areas. They were doing kind of more of a station like reception than a sit down. So we recreated these 5 restaurants as part of kind of their unraveling story. There was many other components of that wedding, but that was just like one piece. And I really enjoyed figuring out how that was going to work.
I love that. Yeah. Did you literally bring in those restaurants? Did they cater it?
No, we didn't. We worked with Paula LeDuc, Paula.
Yep. Just interviewed her yesterday.
Yeah, they did an amazing job. And some of these recipes obviously are like in the public. There's so many cookbooks these days, but they did such a great job recreating these 5 restaurants. So, and then we had a port station. One of the bride actually owned a winery. So we literally got 6 of her favorite ports and had, kind of ports and cordial station, which was really fun.
I like that. I mean, because, clearly we do wine and we do mixed drinks, but port, I love that.
Yeah, I know. I feel like port is kind of this lost art.
Yeah, got to have some port with some chocolate. Trust me on that one.
Definitely.
Oh my God, that does it. Well, and earlier you also talked, we talked about being calm and all of that. What about handling unforeseen challenges? Do you have any stories of some major challenges, and how you overcame them in the moment?
I mean, I would say the recent wedding in Japan with the monsoon was certainly a challenge because everything was planned to be outdoors. And although we had a backup plan for indoors, there was people missing trains and running late. And our guitarist that we flew in from New York was literally like on a train stopped in the middle of the country. And we had to like get our Japanese translator on the phone to navigate with a new driver to take a different route. It took him 12 hours to get to the island. So that was a little bit challenging. In addition, there was some stuff lost in translation around the menu. So kind of managing those last minute details, but really big dramas. Like I've never had any fires. I've had some cakes, melt or fall over from heat. I've had an officiant go to the wrong reception.
Oh no.
And had to delay the cocktail hour. I've delayed ceremonies because there was a downpour. But I've been fortunate enough to not have any sort of tense fall or any really scary.
I also saw another quote where you were saying, kind of related to this, if you're remaining calm, the answer will come.
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, we've definitely had brides get very anxious over particular things, whether a bus is delayed or, we try and protect them from all that behind the scenes information, but sometimes it's just a family member that can take them from, 0 to 100 in terms of anxiety. So we definitely try and be that middle person and mediator to keep things calm and keep the, things moving along.
Yeah. I want to ask you too, Alison, digging in more about the business aspect. So if we go back for a minute after that job that you had with a corporate event, how did you come to the point of starting your business, literally kicking it off?
I was working for that corporate event planner for years and just finding myself a little bit bored. I knew there was something else around events, and I had dabbled in potentially doing meeting planning when I had made that transition to event planning. But one of my friends and colleagues said, meeting planning, you're often in the ballroom and never really get to go out and see the places that you are in the world. So I was always kind of turned off by that. And I kept thinking, well, there has to be a way that you could do weddings and events, but you could still see the world. So who's doing destination weddings? And this is back in 2003. And, on a domestic level or continental level, there really wasn't a lot of people specializing in destination weddings. So I did my research. I talked to a couple people who had done destination weddings and decided there's my niche. That's what I want to do. I want to travel the world and I want to do events that are not just necessarily local. So I really kind of envisioned what that was going to be and kind of went after it and really kind of did my own internal marketing with friends and colleagues and families.
Just spreading the word.
Yeah, really. My first wedding I did was in Tahoe, which at the time in 2003, Tahoe being, 4-hour drive was definitely considered.
Your first wedding?
Yeah, my very first wedding was a destination wedding. I think I got paid $500 to do the planning. So I did Tahoe, and then I had a friend whose friend was getting married in Kauai.
Wait, that was your second one?
That was my second wedding. So I did a wedding in Kauai for, 60 people.
Boy, that's really jumping into the deep end.
Yeah, so I kind of just jumped in and did it for whatever to get the experience. I still had my corporate job at the time. So then, I started to do that and I thought there is a market for this. I just have to figure out how do I get in there and do it. So I transitioned into doing my own thing while assisting probably 9 other planners here locally.
Wow. And then building your own team.
Yeah. And I was 25 at the time, so I wasn't married. I could get on a plane and go anywhere. I had so much time. I was working, crazy hours in the night. I was a workaholic for many, many years of my early life to try and get it going. And then that was in 2003. And then my first book came out in 2009 about destination weddings.
Yeah. And the name of it is?
It's a destination wedding planner.
That's right.
Yeah. And it was like a kind of A to Z guide on how to plan a wedding from afar.
And you also did another book, All the Essentials Wedding Planner?
Yeah, that was more of like a binder that you could organize all your tools in, 18-tab binder. So really help you keep organized. That came out in 2013.
Yeah, I see here to-do lists, sample floor plans, downloadable templates, and more.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, this is basically how we stay organized at Alison Events. That binder is Alison Events. So I feel like it's such a great tool for couples.
I want to go there just for a moment while we're there in terms of writing a book. A lot of the guests on the show have written books, and I'm just thinking, my God, you have enough going on your plate. How do you write a book?
You sit down in the corner and put your noise-canceling headphones on.
I'm curious what your process is. Do you literally make a certain amount of time every day, regardless of what's going on? How do you do it?
Yeah, it's funny. At the time, I had connected with a colleague who, in a totally different industry, had written a book, and he told me how he would go up on the weekends to Inverness in Northern California and write his book.
Just lock himself away?
Yeah, lock himself away. And that sounded so, like your typical book writer. But for me, no, I would just close the door and turn off the music and turn my phone off and just try and focus, 5, 10, 15 hours a week.
Yeah, there was a time when I was writing songs and things were really happening. I had an opportunity to move, be a songwriter, but I didn't do it. But I remember the way I did it was this was while having a job, like you, a corporate job, having the music business at the same time. And I would just start the day before I got distracted and locked into anything and just have everything off and just give myself whatever I could do, an hour, 2 hours, first thing in the morning.
I remember reading a book right before I wrote my book that specifically said that, like creative people, the first thing you do when you wake up is you write.
Is this Julia Cameron, The Artist's Way?
Yeah,
the morning
Artist's
pages?
Way, yeah.
You know what? Preston talked about this too, and I did that when I was writing for 2 years. Yeah, the deal with that, so there's a workbook. It's called The Artist's Way.
Right.
And we're getting no commission on this by Julia Cameron. She has a lot of books out,
Yeah.
but that's the book for creative people to get access their creativity more. And her thing, did you do the morning pages?
I did it. And this was before I wrote my book. I had read that book. But I didn't write my book that way.
Well, but for a moment, I'll explain the morning
Yeah.
pages. So it's waking up, first thing you do, right? You get a pad of paper, pen, old style. And I believe you write 3 pages nonstop without stopping
Right.
and without editing yourself
Right.
and without thinking. And I think her idea, the writer Julia Cameron, is to get out any anxiety and anger and just write it out like, God damn it, I have to blah, blah, blah. And last night, my boyfriend and all of that. But I remember after doing that, and again, at first it's weird. You can't pick up the pen off the paper. You just got to write, well, this is stupid. How am I supposed to keep writing? And you get into a zone, right? You get connected to your subconscious and you start to get these ideas. Did you discover that too as well?
Yeah, it's funny. There were definitely moments where I would write in the morning, and there was moments I'd write at the end of the day. Again, this is pre-children, pre-being married, when I lived alone and could take the time. But I found myself in the most zen moments when I had a cup of Earl Grey tea, and I would sit down at my kitchen table, my little flip up IKEA kitchen table, and I would just sit down and write and just ignore all noises around me. At the time, I probably would write for 1 to 2 hours on my computer, and
The working on your books, you're saying, or
Yeah.
also just simply journal, whatever, writing.
well, the journaling I did follow that book very specifically.
Yeah, there's exercises in there too, and
But yeah, then when I was writing my book, it was mostly just me in my little studio apartment, just putting my head down and drinking tea, probably too much tea.
no, but I like that because you really just kind of get into a zone once you could just break that ice where you have the blank paper in front of you. I love that, always having something like that going on. Also, I understand that you have another company too that you started about 5 years ago called Event Space Consulting. Jesse Toombs, if I'm saying that right, is your managing partner. What is that all about?
Yeah, so I started that business because I found myself as we were traveling the world and scouting different locations that so many times we were saying to ourselves, this venue would be so great if they did this one thing or these 5 things, or if it was just they had thought through the logistics, or if they had thought through the kind of inner workings of how events flow. And so after years and years of that, we decided that, hey, we could have a business that specifically speaks to working with event venues that need help on this. And it goes further than just saying, oh, you should have the loading dock here, or you should have the entrance to the space here. Or, you could probably create a structure that would define your ceremony space over here. It really goes to marketing and helping them figure out how do they get the word out to other businesses and to potential clients. So it's really kind of turned into this bigger picture than just working with event spaces. We work with a catering company right now that's in the Bay Area, and we're helping them do a rebrand. So it's kind of scaled out to be a lot bigger than we initially thought.
Yeah, you're consulting too, on top of everything else.
Yeah, and unlike Alison Events, event-based consulting, we're just like ghostwriters. It's not about us taking credit for what we've done. We're just kind of behind the scenes helping these businesses and venues take their business to the next level, but we don't need the notoriety, right? So it's just a different way to go about it.
Yeah.
It's always behind the scenes. And actually, we just partnered with a very big luxury brand to help them with all their future developments. So.
Oh, that's great. Wow. So I got to ask, all of this stuff that you're doing, you've got Alison Events, you've got Event Space Consulting, you have a 3.5-year-old now, 3-year-old, you're a single parent.
Yep.
I mean, you're traveling, Alison, with the Destination Weddings. If you can put it in words, how are you, Ben? You seem very calm. Even now as I'm saying it, you're not shaking or anything. I'm shaking. How do you balance this all? How do you see yourself doing this?
I mean, Yoga has probably played a big part in my life. You know, really just like coming back in, taking a minute for myself.
So you create moments throughout?
Yeah, I strategize my week around when I'm going to have some calm. I do some nature hikes in Bay Area. There's so many amazing places to walk around. But I really, you know, I just try and have a nice balance between things that are fun and things that are challenging, and spending time with friends and family, and really just trying to cultivate calm just as a part of my life in my everyday way.
But it seems for a lot of us, you know, balancing so much that you kind of get lost. I mean, sometimes I had this experience myself. Sometimes I'm talking to friends and colleagues where we're so much on the go, it's hard to get off of that bullet train.
Yeah, I have a hard time sometimes unwinding at night. But I think by having a child, I feel like that really kind of like recalibrated the way that I do things. When I walk through that door and I'm with my daughter, I'm with her. So I've had to really like put the phone down and turn it off. I mean, I'd be lying if I didn't say that I'm still a little connected when I'm with her. But because she's now able and to articulate like, Mommy, I need your attention. I want to play with you.
Yeah.
She really helped me say, okay, let me just give you my attention and give you my undivided attention. So I've kind of learned via having a child that, you know, you do in order to be a good parent, in order to be a good friend, and to be a good, you know, event planner, you have to have moments for yourself and moments where you can just turn it off.
Yeah, it's a lot of compartmentalizing in a way. It seems like a skill that really has to be developed.
Yeah. I've never gotten into meditation, but that is something that my daughter and I have been doing a little bit at night before bedtime.
Really? 3 years old? Oh, that's neat.
Yeah. There's an app that I just recently discovered that does children's meditation. And they have a nighttime 5-minute where, you know, this Australian woman, and she has a really soft voice, and she says, now close your eyes, stretch your toes, pull up those cozy covers.
Aww.
And it's interesting. It really is calming and relaxing, and she loves it.
Well, I'm also thinking that at such a young age, you're building this into her lifestyle, you know? I mean, I think that's a great gift to give a person when they're really young, is the tools, the skills to know how to do that.
Yeah, I mean, because they're go, go, go all day. And my child could go, go, go all night. I feel like she's a go, go person like her mom. But I think when we have these moments together, it's so precious. And so I think if I can teach her a little bit about slowing down and be a part of that slow down with her.
Yeah, right. You know, it's funny. I have a daughter, too, who's older. And I remember, I mean, just so much going on in my businesses, plural, while parenting her, wanting to be present. And I had this thing I would do every night. I would love to, you know, put her down at night, you know, and spend some nighttime. And that was the most, talk about grounding and pulling me smack into the moment. Great. Because a kid, that's all there is for them is the moment.
Right.
You know, and to let yourself be a part of that, it always put things in perspective.
Yeah, I feel like the end of the night, that like going to bed routine. And of course, I'm the parent that has to sit in the room and hold her hand as she falls asleep. I never was able to establish the discipline of, okay, you're going to sleep.
The boundaries, that word you mentioned earlier.
Exactly. But I love it so dearly. Like we really do.
It's sweet.
Yeah. I call it the cave. I go in the cave for 20 to 30 minutes at night, and we read and we snuggle and we hold hands. And sometimes we sing a chant or we do the meditation together. It's just such a sweet moment.
Oh, wow. Well, do you yourself have, you know, as we start to wrap up here, a morning routine, an end of night routine?
Yeah, I do. I'm pretty consistent. Yeah, my morning routine, and you're going to laugh at this. So Vivian usually comes into my bed in the morning.
Your daughter. Okay.
Yeah, when she wakes up. And, you know, we usually have a little bit of a snuggle. And then I have my coffee like ready to go the night before.
The night before?
Yeah. So it's like she just has to press the red button.
No way.
Yeah. So she'll run in the kitchen. She'll grab her milk, which I've pre-poured in her cup.
Aw.
She'll get it out of the fridge. She'll press the red button.
Yeah.
And then we'll just have a snuggle and read a book, or, you know, let's hang out in bed for a little bit. It's usually like 20 minutes.
Oh, what a great way to start the day.
And then we take a bath.
Aww.
Almost every day I have an outdoor bathtub.
I saw that through the window. I was thinking that is really interesting. Yeah.
It's pretty amazing. It's so calm here in Sausalito in the mornings. And we usually take a bath for like 45 minutes. You know, Barbies in the tub, mermaids in the tub.
Yeah.
I drink my coffee. And it's just a really relaxing time. And that literally is probably 5 days a week, our routine.
Jeez, what a great way to like ground yourself, relax, start off in that mode.
Right.
Do you have an end of day after your daughter and all of that?
You know, I'm a pretty tidy person, so my end of day usually after she's asleep will be just getting everything clean and organized and prepared for the next day. And then I sit down, and lately I've been obsessed with Handmaid's Tale, I'll be honest.
Ooh, I'm watching that too. It's a little dark, though.
It's super dark.
I'm a little concerned about my mood, you know?
I'm concerned about the future of my child when I watch it.
God.
But yeah, I have that and a couple other shows on rotation.
But that's how you kind of end the night.
Yeah.
Something where you can just chill out and zone out.
Yeah, if I'm alone, yeah. If I'm with a companion, then, you know, or friends or whatever, then obviously it's not revolving around TV. But I'm also listening to some great podcasts as well. I've been getting a little bit more on the train of podcasts, so I've got some good books in rotation there too.
Any in particular?
Well, I'm reading about children's discipline right now.
Yeah.
How to talk to your kids so they'll listen.
That's a good one. We could all use that.
And you know what? It's funny. I'm learning a lot about how to talk to children, but also how to talk to adults.
How to talk to them. Well, there's the child in us. We could put it that way, right?
Right. It's very relatable.
Well, geez, Alison, this has been such a pleasure. I really appreciate the time you're taking and being so direct about all of this. Thank you so much. This has been wonderful.
Yeah. Thank you, Andy. It's been great having you here.
Thank you for listening to my conversation with Alison Hotchkiss Rinderknecht of Alison Events. Be sure to check out her other company called Events-Based Consulting that she partnered with Jesse Toombs on to learn how you can attract more high-end clients. And also she speaks at conferences, does one-on-one consulting to help you with your marketing, rebranding, and more. She also has published 2 books. You can find all of that through our show notes at our website of theweddingbiz.com. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't. There's some great advantages to doing that. Don't forget to listen to the next level that goes with this. And I want to mention that next week's guest is someone outside of the event industry who I interviewed on another show that I have. And I want to present it for all of you to hear in honor of Thanksgiving because it is such a story of gratefulness, gratitude, and inspiration. I mean, this person's story knocked me out, gives me goosebumps. It is a beautiful story. Again, so inspiring. Doesn't matter what business, what industry we're in. This is really worth hearing. So it's a very special episode you're going to hear next week. So thank you for listening. This is Andy with The Wedding Biz.